Hi, I'm John Rukavina, and my speaking partner, Elisa Arnoff, is out fighting for truth, justice, and the American way in the courts, so I'm here today to talk about the presentation we'll be doing. If it's broke, fix it, developing effective harassment prevention programs. 1964, Congress added sex to the protected classes enumerated in the Civil Rights Act. But it wasn't until 1986, 22 years later, that the U.S. Supreme Court decided that sexual harassment was discrimination within the meaning of the Civil Rights Act. How are we doing now? It's 34 years after the Supreme Court decision, and we'd expect that sexual harassment complaints would have plummeted to the point where they occur very rarely, but that's not the case. The number of workplace sexual harassment complaints has remained stable over time. Our prevention programs really don't seem to be working very well. But over the past 5 years, there's been a fair amount of research that indicates ways that we can make our training and education more effective. First of all, we need to talk about the role of lawyers in making sexual harassment prevention training what it is today, namely a way of demonstrating avoidance of liability. So, in other words, when the Supreme Court made its ruling, it essentially gave employers a box to check. If you do a training program for your employees and you deal with sexual harassment complaints, you've met all your legal obligations. That's it. Changing people's behavior? Are you kidding? But we can do better, and a number of employers have. You need to start by identifying what your organization culture is like, and that's as simple as using a questionnaire to ask people what their experience has been with harassment in general and sexual harassment in particular in the workplace. Is there an issue? One city actually has focus groups representing each protected class in the Civil Rights Act, and they meet periodically to talk about what the environment is like in the organization. So you've got some idea of what target it is that you're shooting at. The second step that research has indicated is that sexual harassment prevention training, is more effective when people realize that it's not just a legal checkbox, but something that makes the organization better. And that's particularly crucial for the fire service because we depend on an environment of trust. If you and I are up on the roof together and the roof starts to go, each of us believes that the other will help the other. That's a tough environment to maintain if sexual and racial and other harassment is a norm in the workplace. No matter what we say about tough humor, the reality is that those things can be very painful and they can erode trust. Third, shine a light on actual cases. If you do that in your own jurisdiction, you may be limited in terms of how much information you can share about events that have occurred. So look to your neighbors, look to what you can see at fire service magazines, ask people in your own organization to role play a fire service sexual harassment or other harassment case so they can actually demonstrate what goes on. Avoid encouraging what's called identity threat reaction, pounding the table and talking about harasser behavior, because there'll be a number of folks in your classes that don't want to be there in the first place, and they think that this training is aimed at making them look bad. And what some researchers have found is that for those people, sexual harassment prevention training actually reinforces the negative behavior. And a zero tolerance policy, what sounds good, can be a real landmine. If I tell a off-color joke that somebody thinks might represent a mild form of sexual harassment, does that mean I get fired the same way somebody gets fired who inappropriately touches someone? And there are a lot of people who've been harassed or who have heard those kinds of things that don't want to report it because they don't want to be responsible for somebody losing their job or losing pay. Next, bystander intervention training is crucial. In many cases, the harasser doesn't realize in the moment what he or she is doing. You need to train other people in the organization to be prepared to step in and defuse the situation so that the harassment never becomes an issue. Finally, tie harassment prevention training to workplace civility in any event. Again, we rely heavily on that relationship of trust, and anything that interferes with that, whether it's sexual or racial harassment or just plain bad behavior and ill manners, it's hard to corrode trust more quickly than tolerating or engaging in that kind of behavior in the firehouse. Our session is designed to help you build a foundation for effective harassment prevention training in your workplace so we're not reading about your department in the fire service periodicals. Thank you.